الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. First of all, I welcome you all to this summer school, and I thank Dr. Tariq for his presentation and for the center, and Dr. Mu'taz also for his interesting presentation. My presentation, like you see on the screen, will be on the vicegerency of man, الخلافة or الاستخلاف.
That's by accident.
So, the question of vicegerency or khilafa istikhlaf is a question of crucial importance in Islamic teaching, as vicegerency is a purpose for which man was created and settled on earth, and therefore vicegerency will be or is the parameter which the value of human action can be measured. And like Dr. Mu'taz mentioned before, this question was not given a big care by the Islamic intellectual tradition, despite of the fact that it's that all other disciplines depend on it. And we will mention the reasons why we think this question was not developed. We will mention the reasons later. And actually, even the contemporary scholars did not give the question its right importance, and we will see why we should give this question its right importance and why it's important. One of the contemporary scholars who focused the most on this question of vicegerency is Dr. Al-Majid in several and different books of his, and one of the book has the same title, The Vicegerency of Man Between Revelation and Reason. But actually Dr. Najjar in his book, he didn't focus on vicegerency as a philosophical framework, but he focused on the dialectic of reason or text, reason and reality in the accomplishment of vicegerency. And this is why in this presentation we will try to focus on vicegerency as a philosophical framework for ijtihad. So we will focus on vicegerency as such, and not on the role, or not specifically on the role of reason and text, but on vicegerency as a philosophical framework. So yes, we will focus on vicegerency on philosophical frame of reference for ijtihad, and dealing with the text, and dealing with the context, and in civilizational elevation. So that was the introduction. So first of all, vicegerency of man, istikhlaf or khilafah. To begin, we will talk a little bit about the universe, and then about the place of human being in the universe. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the universe with al-haq. He has created the heavens, خَلَقَ السَّمَوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضَ بِالْحَقِّ. He has created the heavens and the earth with the true, with the haq. So that means that the true is in effect in this universe. The universe is guided with the true and guided to the true. And so this universal truth is one. This universal haq is one, but the way that each element of the universe follows to be faithful to this truth is different. And there is where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, الَّذِي أَعْطَى كُلَّ شَيْءٍ خَلْقَهُ ثُمَّ هَدَى. He who gave unto everything that exists its true nature and form, and thereupon guides it towards its fulfillment. So you see, everything has its nature and everything is guided, but this guidance to the true, it will be different accordingly to the nature of the element that is guided. And also, with the same truth, and for the same truth, was the revelation was revealed for the same purpose, with the same purpose, with the same truth. and this is where we read in the Quran, وَبِالْحَقِّ أَنزَلْنَاهُ وَبِالْحَقِّ نَزَلْ. With truth have we sent it down, so the revelation, and with truth had it descent, and we have not sent you but as the giver of good news and as a warner. So the Prophet was not sent to establish a new truth, but he was just sent to what? To warn and give the good news and direct to this existing truth. So, so Islam was revealed with the same truth and leads to the same truth that is in effect in the universe. So, actually, in other words, Islam is the universal order to which all the elements of the universe are guided. And actually, we have to distinguish here between Islam as a revelation and Islam as a universal order. Islam as a revelation is actually only a part of Islam as the universal order. So the truth, the haqq, is the divine will to be in harmony with the inner nature by accomplishing the purpose for which each element was created. So Islam as a revelation, like I said, is part of this universal haqq, part of this universal truth, and a part of one of the ways that will lead to this universal truth. And that means that actually, if we talk about Islam in that sense, as a universal order, it means that every single element of the universe is Muslim. And this is what we find in the Quran. And this is why Allah addressed those who rejected revelation, reminding them that actually this revelation is nothing but a part of the universal order. أَفَغَيْرَ دِينِ اللَّهِ يَبْغُونَ وَلَهُ أَسْلَمَ مَنْ فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ طَوْعًا وَكَرْهًا وَإِلَيْهِ يُرْجَعُونَ. Do they seek for other than the religion of Allah, while all creatures in heaven and on earth, willing or unwilling, bow to His will? So accepted Islam, أَسْلَمَ, accepted Islam, and to Him shall they all be brought back. So Allah is showing those who reject revelation that they are not an exception on the rule. Islam is the universal order. So what else do you want than this universal order, than this revelation that is part of this universal order? So all the elements, like I said, of the universe are Muslim, because Islam actually, what does Islam mean? It means at least three things. Al-Istislam, to surrender to the divine will. And actually, by following the universal order and by accomplishing the purpose of your creation, and by the fact that each of these elements accomplish the purpose of their creation, they are surrendering to the divine will. So they are Muslim. So one meaning is Al-Istislam. One other meaning is Dukhulu fi silm, to be in peace. And actually, the elements of the universe, by surrendering to Allah, they will be in peace with their nature and be in peace with the other elements. So they are in peace. This is the second meaning. So this is why also they are Muslim. The third meaning is Shay Salim. So this comes from the Arabic root. Shay Salim, something that is pure. And actually, by submitting or surrendering to God and going back to their true nature, they will be pure and purely in harmony. So, so each element of the creation is Muslim, but the way that they worship Allah, the way that they accomplish their Islam is different, like I said, according to their nature. And human being is not an exception on this rule. Human being also was created according to a specific nature, and also he was guided to the mission he was created for according to this nature, except of one fundamental difference. And this fundamental difference, we can find it in a verse where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّا عَرَضْنَا الْأَمَانَةَ عَلَى السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَالْجِبَالِ فَأَبَيْنَ أَن يَحْمِلْنَهَا وَأَشْفَقْنَ مِنْهَا وَحَمَلَهَا الْإِنسَانُ إِنَّهُ كَانَ ظَلُومًا جَهُولًا. We offered the trust to the heavens and the earth and the mountains, but they refused to bear it and were afraid of it, and the human carried it. Surely he is a harm-doer and an ignorant. So the difference is that man was not guided instinctively, automatically to the fulfillment of his task on earth. He was not guided automatically to the faithfulness to his task and to his nature, but he received the responsibility to strive by his own will and by his own effort to the fulfillment of his task. This is the fundamental difference. And this is why, so the fundamental difference, I repeat, is that all the other elements are guided to the faithfulness with their own nature, and are guided to the surrendering to Allah, and are guided to the haqq in an instinctive way without having the choice of transgressing their mission. While a human being was guided or with a choice. He had the choice to follow this guidance or to reject it. And this is the amana, the responsibility or the trust that he got. And this is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him things that he didn't give to the other creatures. He gave him reasons that will allow him to make a choice and to be conscious of his consciousness, to be conscious of Allah and of himself and of the others and of his mission on earth, and to be able to make the choice. Second thing, he gave him revelation that this is his guidance. You know, the other elements of like we saw in the verse, الذي أعطى كل شيء خلقه ثم هدى. He gave each element his nature and he guided. And this is also an effect for a human being. But the human being, the guidance of the human being is not true. الإرادة الإلهية التكوينية, the universal divine will, but الإرادة الإلهية التشريعية, the revealed divine will. So through the revelation. This is why he got the revelation, to be able to follow the guidance and to be able to choose to follow the guidance. And third also, this is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala established laws in the universe that are accessible to human intellect. Because actually you know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is out of he is out of space. He is not in space. He is independent from space and from time and from logics and from all these laws that are regulating the universe. He doesn't need it. Actually, when it rains, it has nothing to do with the laws that we know. Allah make it rain without needing these laws. But why are there laws there? It's for us to understand how the creation functions, to be able to bury or to care our task as a Khalifa. And this is, we have verses in the Quran referring to this, referring to the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is out of this sababiyya, out of causality. He doesn't need causes. It's only we who does need them in order to be able to be to carry or to accomplish our task. So the worship of man. So we saw that each element of the creation worships Allah as Muslim in a different way, according to the nature and according to the function that Allah gave each element. So the question now is, what is the worship of man? What is the specific function which man was created for? Often when we ask Muslims or even scholars sometimes about what is the purpose which man was created for, they will refer to this first verse that you see. وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. I created the jinn and humankind only that they may worship me. But actually, this is true and not true at the same time, because this verse doesn't establish the specific function of human being. This verse only says that human being is not an exception on the general rule. Human being and jinn are not an exception on the general rule. Even they, like all the other elements of the universe, were created for worship. So here we are not talking about a specific function. Everything was created for worship. And the proof is that we find this in the Quran. There is none in the heavens and earth except he comes to the merciful as a worshipper. Everything in the heaven and earth is worshipping. And we find so many verses in the Quran talking about the worship of the creation. So it's a wrong answer in the sense that this is not a specific task of the human being. This is a general task. He was created to worship. As the other elements were also. But what does it mean to worship? Sometimes we may reduce this concept of worship to rituals, ibadat, prayer and fasting, etc. But this is not. This is this very specific and restrictive sense of worship. But worship is, like we said before, and this is what we can understand from the worship from the other elements of the creation. What is the worship? The worship is the fact that they are faithful to their nature and they are accomplishing the task which they was created for. So they are surrendering to Allah by accomplishing the task where they were created for. So this is how they worship. So worship is to be faithful to your nature and to accomplish, to surrender to Allah with the accomplishment of the task which you were created for. In that sense, everything you do for this purpose is a worship. Even sleeping can be a worship. Even, I don't know whatever can be a worship. And this is what we find in some prophetic traditions where the Prophet ﷺ said even the relationship, the intimate relationship between a man and a woman is a worship. So everything that is contributing to fulfilling the task you were created for was a worship. And in that sense, everything was created for worship. But we said before that all elements has their own way to worship, and that worship is nothing to fulfill their respective function. So what is the specific worship of human being? What is his specific function, the specific function of human being? Well, actually, human being knows better the function, the worship, of all other beings than his own purpose, than his own function. While all the other elements were only created in the end to enable him to fulfill his purpose. سَخَرَ لَكُم مَا فِي السَّمَوَاتِ وَمَا فِي الْأَرْضِ جَمِيعًا مِنْهُ. And he made subservient to you as a gift from himself all that is in the heavens and on earth. In this, behold, there are messages or signs indeed for people who think. So everything that is in heaven and earth were created at the end to enable us to accomplish, to fulfill our function and our mission. But human being knows sometimes better the function of the other elements than his own. So what is the function where the human being was created for? Is to be a Khalifa, is to be a vicegerent. And what is vicegerency? This is also a question. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, this is in this verse where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about this mission of human being. He says, وَإِذْ قَالَ رَبُّكَ لِلْمَلَائِكَةِ إِنِّي جَاعِلٌ فِي الْأَرْضِ خَلِيفَةً قَالُوا أَتَجْعَلُ فِيهَا مَن يُفْسِدُ فِيهَا وَيَسْفِكُ الدِّمَاءَ وَنَحْنُ نُسَبِّحُ بِحَمْدِكَ وَنُقَدِّسُ لَكَ, etc. until the end. So when your Lord said to the angels, I am placing on earth a Khalif, vicegerent, they replied, will you put there who corrupts and sheds blood, when we exalt your praises and sanctify you, he said, I know what you don't know. And he taught Adam all the names, then showed them to the angels, saying, inform me of the names of these, if you are truthful. Exaltation to you, replied the angels. We have no knowledge except that which you gave or you taught us. You are indeed the knowing, the wise, etc. So here, what is vicegerency? What is khilafah? So the word khilafah in Arabic refers to several notions. The notion of replacement, the notion of substitution, the notion of delegation. So the question here is, whose substitute is the human being? Who is he substituting? And what was delegated to him, or in what was he mandated to be the substitute in? Well, the answer is in the ayah. The answer is in the ayah. First of all, the angel said, will you put there who corrupts and sheds blood? How did the angels knew that this human being will corrupt and shed blood? In some tafsirs, Ibn Kathir and others, a lot of other tafsirs, we find that because there wasn't some kind of intelligence existence on earth, and angels knew that they were corrupted and knew that Adam would do the same thing. But these stories comes from the Indian mythology and doesn't have any root and we don't know about their roots. So there are only stories about mythology. And actually, the verse itself tells us or give us the answer. And that is the fact that the angels knew what Khalifa was about. They knew that Khalifa or Khilafah is to be mandated for a responsibility, a task that is one of Allah's. And that is the task of managing things to keep them faithful to the truth, to the haqq. And this is where they understood that the khilafah means that this is a responsibility that will allow you to choose. So man would be allowed to choose. It will be possible for him to choose between good and bad. And he is not God. He will do some tasks assigned to him by God, and which are initially God's tasks, and this is khilafah, this vicegerency, and he is not God, so he will shed blood and he will corrupt. And this is why they said, when we exalt you praises and we sanctify you, so we cannot disobey, we cannot choose, because if we would be on earth, we will only be applying the divine will without having the choice of transgression. So this is why we said, we exalt your praise and sanctify you. So how come you put somebody who is Khalifa, who have this responsibility that is a huge responsibility, a divine responsibility? And he said, I know what you don't know. And he taught Adam all the names. And like some Mufassirun says, it means he put in the human being the potential of knowing everything of the material world, of the dunya, not of the metaphysical world. He had this potential. So, and this potential made him eligible to be the Khalifa. And this is what Allah demonstrated to the angels. And then they replied, exaltations to you, we have no knowledge except that which you gave to us. So now they understood. Their only knowledge they have is in what? Is an instinctive knowledge, or a knowledge that Allah gave them. Their knowledge cannot be developed. They have not the potential to discover and to to start from the knowledge they have to go to the knowledge they don't have. But Adam had this potential to know everything. So they said, we have only the knowledge which you gave us, and Adam, he has this potential, and now they understood. So, Allah delegated a part of His function to the human being as a responsibility for which he was created. So, we can read in the Quran, يُدَبِّرُ الْأَمْرَ مِنَ السَّمَاءِ إِلَى الْأَرْضِ. This is one of the functions of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Al-Mudabbir, يُدَبِّرُ الْأَمْرِ. He manages all that exists from heaven to earth. Allah manages everything. This is one of His functions. And it's a part of this function, of this divine function, that was delegated to human being. This management, this vicegerency. Now, which part of the divine management, Tadbir al-Ilahi, was delegated to human being? Well, we can find the answer of this question in two things, in the reality and in the revelation. The reality shows us which part of the divine. So first of all, just to give you, to make things maybe clear, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shows us in the Quran that He's the one who is managing everything. Everything is under His management, the whole universe. And the Khilafah is the fact that He gave a part of this management to the responsibility of human being. His responsibility, His function, is to manage one part of the universe with His own will and His own, I will not say power, because there is no power except of the power of Allah, but His own ability and His own, let's say, energy and strive. So, now the question that I was asking is, which part of this divine management was delegated to human being? Or which part of the universe was delegated to the human management so that the human manage it accordingly to the divine will? Well, we can, like I said, we can reply to this question by two elements. The reality, because the reality shows us where it goes wrong. Allah is managing the whole universe with the divine management. So the part of the universe where it goes wrong will show us where the divine management was delegated to human being, because human being is not God. And when we look at this reality, we will see that there are three things that are going wrong in the universe. The first is inside the human being. Often it goes wrong. He's not in harmony with himself. He has troubles with himself. Etc. So often it goes wrong inside the human being, between the human being and himself. This is the first part that was delegated to human responsibility. The management of what? Of the inner self. The second part of the universe, or the second aspect where it goes wrong, is the human society, between the human being and the human being. There also we see that there are a lot of problems, wars, and countless number of problems. Because the management of this dimension, the relationship between human beings, was delegated to the human being, and is not a divine management, but he is Khalifa, he has to manage. And the third part is between the human being and the universe, between the human being and his natural environment. And this also, we can see that it goes wrong, because it was delegated to the divine, to the human management, and he's responsible to be Khalifa in managing this part. And we find that, so this is the reality, but in the revelation we find also verses and revelation that address this reality where it goes wrong. So an example of the first verse that is talking about the inner world, قَدْ أَفْلَحَ مَنْ زَكَّاهَا. He is indeed successful who caused this self to grow in purity. So one of the first mission is to what? To try to purify ourselves in order to be faithful to our true nature. And we can find in other verses where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَأَقِمْ وَجْهَكَ لِلدِّينِ حَنِيفًا فِطْرَةَ اللَّهِ الَّتِي فَطَرَ النَّاسَ عَلَيْهَا لَا تَبْدِيلَ فِي خَلْقِ اللَّهِ ذَلِكَ الدِّينُ الْقَيِّمُ وَلَكِنَّ أَكْثَرَ النَّاسِ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. So direct yourself to فَأَقِمْ وَجْهَكَ لِلدِّينِ حَنِيفًا, to the religion. And this is the fitrah, this is the true nature that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put inside human beings. So the first mission is to, and Prophet says, يُولَدُ الْمَوْلُودُ عَلَى الْفِطْرَةِ. Each newborn is born on the fitrah. He is born with the pure nature. And then comes the problems that will keep him away from his true nature. So the first thing is this management of the inner world. The second example of a verse that is talking about the management of human relations is the verse where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, كنتم خير أمة أخرجت للناس تأمرون بالمعروف وتنهون عن المنكر وتؤمنون بالله. You are the best of the nations, raised up for the benefit of man, but the condition is you enjoy what is right and forbid the wrong and believe in Allah. So the purpose is to strive, to aspire for the best human society, the best possible human society, and to be a Khalifa in contributing to this. This is the second dimension. The third dimension is, like I said, the relationship between the human being and his natural environment. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, هو أنشأكم من الأرض واستعمركم فيها. هو أنشأكم من الأرض واستعمركم فيها. And it's interesting that the Raghib al-Asfahani in his book Al-Dari'a, he is referring to this verse and saying that here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us the responsibility of عمارة الأرض. استعمركم الألف والسين للطلب is the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala demands us to edify the earth. To edify the earth means to manage it accordingly to the divine will in order to not destroy it, but also to edify it, to make the best out of it from human beings. This is the edification of the earth. So these three things are the function or are the parts of the creation, part of the universe that were delegated, that are not managed by the divine will, by the divine universal will, but that should be managed by the divine, or partially should be managed by the human istikhlaf throughout the divine revelated will. And here we can see, so the worship of Allah is the general purpose for which all creatures were created, and the specific worship of human being. I forgot to mention before a verse maybe. This verse, the last one. ألم ترى أن الله يسبح له من في السماوات والأرض والطير صافات كل قد علم صلاته وتسبيحه والله عليم بما يفعلون. Have you not pondered how Allah is exalted by those in the heavens and on earth? Even the birds, as they spread out their wings, each one knows its own mode of prayer and praise, and Allah knows all that they do. So, just to tell you that indeed this verse shows clearly that each one of the elements of the creation are worshipping, but كل قد علم صلاته وتسبيحه. Each one of them know exactly how to worship, know exactly what is his mission. So just to tell you that worship is a general purpose, and the specific worship of human being is to be a vicegerent, a manager of God on earth. And this management that was delegated to him from God, this divine management, is the management of the inner world throughout Tawheed and Tazkiyah, and we may come back to this tomorrow when we will talk about spirituality. The management of human relation throughout Amr bil Ma'ruf and Nahy al Munkar, like we saw in the verse, تأمرون بالمعروف وتنهون عن المنكر. This is the condition, and this is a general principle in this management of human social affairs. And then the management of nature and its resources. So this is just a brief about the meaning of al-khilafah and istikhlaf. Then the dialectic of text, reason, and reality in accomplishing the purpose of istikhlaf. So we have, first of all, the reason that comes before revelation. Because without reason, revelation doesn't have any sense. Without reason, you can't acknowledge that the revelation is a revelation. You need reason to know that the revelation is a revelation. And so, first of all, the reason, and then the revelation. And and then we need again reason from revelation to come to an understanding and conceptualization of khilafah al-istikhlaf. And then, with this conceptualization that our reason deducted from revelation, we need again reason for understanding revelation and understanding human reality and universal reality in order to fulfill this task of vicegerency. So the two levels, the first level is of the understanding of the general concept, and the second level is the implementation. Because revelation by itself is not enough. It may be enough to give us the general frame of what khilafah is, generally, but it's not enough to tell us how to be a khalifa. And this is why we need not only revelation, but also our reason to understand human reality. I said before that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He made us khalifa, He gave us reason and He gave us a revelation, but He gave us also, He established also rules, empirical rules in the universe in order for us to understand the universe, in order to implement this task of khilafah. And He established also empirical rules in the human being, in the human psychology and the human body and the human behavior and human history and society, etc. So all of these things are needed and essential for the fulfillment of vicegerency, khilafah, because the revelation didn't come with all the elements that will enable us to fulfill this task.
You would like to have 45 minutes for discussion, or maybe less than that, and then they go for discussion in the last part of the day?
We have 12 minutes before the house goes on.
Okay. So, vicegerency between effectiveness and decline. The vicegerency in the emergence of the Islamic civilization, as you know, in the first 13 years of the revelation, in the Meccan period, the revelation was focused on intellectual and spiritual education of the first Muslims, which caused that they have integrated this concept of khilafah as a frame of reference in an intuitive way, in a spontaneous way. So it was there, it was integrated by them, by intuition, after, and Dr. Mu'taz is laughing, and we will discuss about this later. So So actually, this is what revelation was focused on: intellectual education, replying to correcting the conceptions, and this intellectual education was also there was also a dialectic relation with the reality, because it was also replying to misconceptions that were existing in the reality. So it was universal and contextualized at the same time, because dealing with certain reality and correcting misconceptions from this reality, and building also the intelligence of the first Muslims. So this intellectual and spiritual education. And it is on this, on the basis of this worldview, that they have built their society in Medina, and the early Muslims built their civilization in all its manifestations. And I invite you to read the books of Al-Faruqi, who focus a lot of the manifestation of the Islamic creed in the Islamic civilization. And he showed that the Islamic creed of Tawheed and Khilafah was even there in the urban design and architecture and arts and in all the manifestation of Islamic civilization. So it was there. What does this mean? It means that the Islamic civilization had occurred when the Islamic creed had a direct impact on life. There was a direct connection between their creed, what they believed in, and their production in society and their civilizational process. And this creed was dominating the individual and the collective entity, and was mobilizing all the powers and all the forces that were present in the individual and in the society. So there was a very strong connection with the creed and with the action. And then there was a disconnection. And the disconnection, at a certain period, a break occurred between the Islamic creed and the human action. It doesn't mean that the Muslims lost their creed. No. The creed was still there in their minds, but abstracted from application in reality, without notable role in the construction and guidance of reality. This is on the practical level, this disconnection between creed, what they believed in, and human action and reality. On the theoretical level, because of this break between the creed and the action, Muslims did not produce philosophies and disciplines in order to concretize their creed. So for me, Khilafah as a philosophical framework is actually a means, a methodology to concretize the Islamic creed and the reality, like we will see later. So this is why this question, this issue of Khilafah was never theorized, because there was no need anymore for concretizing the creed and the reality, because there was a disconnection between creed and reality. So the science of creed, the science of Aqidah, actually remained an abstract science, debating and controversing with sects and other faiths without offering the means of civilizational edification. Aqidah, the science of Aqidah, never developed to offer this philosophy of application of the Aqidah. It was only abstract debate. And after the long break between creed and civilizational contribution, well, the need today for developing the overall Islamic philosophy of Khilafah has never been greater. We have a great need today, and especially that after centuries of decline, a new world order emerged with new philosophies, new frames of reference on which this world is based, in everything, in economics and in politics and in society and everything. So we have a certain frame of reference that is regulating everything, this new world. And we want a civilizational contribution from our principles. How will we do it when we don't have a clear picture, when we don't have a clear frame of the Islamic worldview? Okay. Vicegerency as an overall philosophy. Well, the lens of vicegerency, yes, the lens of Khilafah. Khilafah actually offers a lens, offers glasses, through which we look at the world. And with this philosophical frame, we can look at life, and we can build our actions and our production and our projects on this frame. And also, vicegerency is also a lens through which we will look at the other. Because according to the aqidah of vicegerency, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, why did He create human being? Is to be a Khalifa and to worship Allah. But the question is, why did He create a human being to worship Him? Does he need to be worshipped? Does He like it to be worshipped? No. But why then? For the benefit of this human being. And why did He create a human being to benefit him? Why? He could have not have done it. Why? Yeah, but there is an answer. There must be an answer. Actually, the answer can be found in. So He created this human being to benefit him, to be ليكرمه أو لتكريمه, to honor him. But why did He want to honor somebody? Well, the answer of this lies in Allah Self. Who is Allah? And His attributes. And Allah is Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim, Al-Kareem, and so forth. So the answer lies in the attributes of Allah. Al-Khaliq, He is Al-Khaliq, He is a creator. So creator, He creates. And He is Ar-Rahman. Ar-Rahman, He gives Rahmah. And He is Al-Kareem. Al-Kareem, Yukrim. So the reason lies in Allah's supreme or high attributes. So Allah created a human being to honor Him and to be merciful to Him, because He's the merciful. This is one of His attributes, so it's logic. So here we have our answer. And we can go further and say, okay, but if Allah created a human being to honor Him and to do good for Him for His own happiness, why is it possible for a human being to fall into misery? And he can make the wrong choices and go to hell. He could have created somebody who doesn't make the wrong choices and doesn't go to hell. And the answer here again lies in the supreme attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah is Kareem, and He wants to honor a human being. And if the human being could not have made mistakes, well, he will not be different than the other creations. So he will not have any honor. He will be the same. But to honor him, He made him responsible. And this is the honor. Why I'm saying this, talking about our perception to the other throughout the lens of Khilafah, is that this is how we see the non-Muslim. We see him as somebody who was honored by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who Allah wanted to honor. So Allah created him for his happiness. So we will see the other as somebody who has dignity. Somebody who we should be merciful with, because Allah is merciful with him, He has created him with mercy. Somebody who we should respect, and we should want the good for him, because Allah wants the good for him. So this is a lens. Vicegerency will be a lens also to look at the others. So I said a lens to look at life, a lens to look at the others, so the non-believers. A lens also to measure human action, like I said, a lens for ijtihad, and we will talk about this tomorrow. And the need for theorization, and this will be the final word. Well, we need to theorize this concept of khilafah, to theorize it, because to be able to use it as a lens, it must be clear and it must be theorized. And to re-establish the link between creed and action, we need this general frame. This will be the methodology between creed and human action and reality. And also, this is very needed to be a parameter of the al-ulum al-shar'iyya, the Islamic sciences. For example, maqasid. When you study maqasid, we will find a big problem. One of the big problems is that there is the scholars of maqasid doesn't agree about how many are the maqasid. Are there only 5 or 6, or can we add? Can we don't add? For me, one of the main issues why it's not clear, because what is the parameter to know what are the maqasid al-ulya, what are the higher maqasid? When you look at the parameters that they settled, they are not clear parameters. If we use khilafah as a parameter, then for me, and I wrote a study about this, for me it would be clear. Because the higher objective is the one that is needed, is essential to accomplish the khilafah, and there is nothing higher than this for the khilafah. So this is also needed for maqasid, as a parameter for maqasid, as a parameter for the Islamic sciences, as a parameter to understand religion, to understand concept of the religion. For example, concept of falah. Falah in English is success. What is falah in Islam? Well, when we understand what is khilafah, then we know that there lies the falah. Then we can define falah. What is sa'ada? What is happiness? What is jihad? What is jihad? When you know khilafah, we know that each action, each effort to accomplish khilafah is jihad. So we will have clear vision of jihad, of al-ibadah, what is ibadah, what is tawheed, etc. So it will be also very helpful to understand some essential concepts in Islam, and also to understand all the principles of Islam. We have so many principles that are scattered sometimes and are not linked to each other. This concept, this general frame would be very helpful to link the specific principles of Islam to each other, and to know where to place them, to know the right place, to know how each of the principles of Islam and each of the prescriptions of Islam will lead to khilafah, and what is the right place for each principles in this general frame. This is also very useful. And finally, because the fact that this frame was not clear, we found in the near history that some Muslims were calling to the revival of Muslims and Islam, relying on other frames of references, Western frames of references and Western parameters. And the problem here is you can't revive Islam on the basis of other frames of references, because you will have a misformed creature. But on the other side, we have others that are calling for reform and revival of Muslims and Islam, throughout fatwa and throughout dealing with specific issues without giving also the general frame. And this is also another problem. So here also we see why we need this theorization. Wallahu ahkam wa a'lam. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.
Thank you very much for this good presentation. Actually, we had a seminar at our university about the Vicegerency, and one of the things that was discussed was whether Muslims or non-Muslims are the best Khalifa in earth. When we look to the world today, and how the Muslim countries and the non-Muslim countries, and who is the best Khalifa and you talked about Falah, al-Falah al-Ard. And there was a questions, what are the Muslims doing today and what non-Muslims are doing today? Because one of the discussions was that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created Adam, he taught him all the names, and it means that he taught him how to create a computer. And that knowledge was existing in Adam, but he was maybe unconscious about it. But everything was created from the first thing. And people in this conference were talking about that Adam had all this knowledge in him when God created him. Even the knowledge of today's the airplanes, the apple, everything was in Adam at that time. But Adam was in another context, and he was unconscious about that. And God made this develop with human being through the run of all life. And who is today, the question, who is the good Khalifa in Arab? And in the seminar, they talked about that everyone is a Khalifa for Arab. So, but the Muslims are more interested into Khilafat but trying to make Khalifa for person, individual Khalifa. When someone is disappearing, we're trying to be Khalifa for other people, try to find a new Khalifa from other people, not Khalifa for Allah. So the understanding of Khilafat al-Ard has changed to Khilafat al-Insan. If Tariq Ramadan disappears tomorrow, we have to try to find someone like him. For instance, that's if me, I disappear tomorrow. That is what Khalifa among many Muslims are. It discussed that Khalifa is Khalifa of people, individuals, and we try to find Khalifa for Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and not Khilafat al-Ard. This is what my reflection, not a question, but kind of reflection.
If I may just comment on that. Actually, this debate is a very old debate. It's not a new debate. Is a human Khalifa Khalifatullah, or is he Khalifa? It means that he is replacing, the human beings are replacing each other. Why is there this debate existing? It's a theological question, because some people argued that this is a kind of shirk or a kind of heresy to say that human being is Khalifatullah. Why? Because like I said before, Khilafah means the replacement or substitution, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala cannot be replaced or cannot be substituted. Khalifa means that somebody goes and somebody else replaces him, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't go, he's always here. So this is why they refuse to say that human being is Khalifatullah. But actually this question was debated, like I said, among a lot of scholars, and a lot of scholars said the opposite, and there are a lot of arguments replying to this this possibility of misunderstanding. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's istakhlaf al-insan, the human being is a Khalifa. It doesn't mean that Allah is absent, He's there, but looking at Him, of how He will act, is like, I don't know, just for trying to give you an example, I go shopping with my child, and I give him my wallet, and I give him the responsibility to manage my money while he is buying things. So I'm there with him just to test him and to see how he will manage. It doesn't mean that I will be absent, or that so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not absent, but He gave this responsibility to for challenging and testing human being.
Next question. You mentioned in your presentation that in the earlier period of Islamic civilization, vicegerency was a natural concept, and it wasn't separated neither from architecture, art, culture, or whatever it was. But then comes disconnection, like disconnection between faith and deeds. Can you specify the period of time, what century, ruling, whatever it is, and the reason why this disconnection started to appear?
Actually, I think it's difficult to situate it, but this is what I wanted to talk about tomorrow. Al-Ghazali, when he wrote his book Ihya Ulumuddin, he was referring to this and saying that he will try to reconnect what was disconnected, and he will try to reconnect the connection, so the action that was represented by al-fiqh and the creed represented by al-aqidah and by spirituality, etc. So we have scholars who are referring to this disconnection. So I can't situate a specific period of time but it was an evaluation. It is an evaluation, and there is no specific period of time where we can say here it started, but it started slowly and continuously.
Just to continue with questions.
So, just to continue on this question, so you said that during the Prophet ﷺ era, it was the intuition. So the follower, they have the intuition, and then they reflect all their beliefs into their day-to-day way of life. So, can you please elaborate more on this intuition? So, why this intuition has been lost? It could be recovered. So, what's your thought on this?
So, like I said, this intuition came out of the spiritual and intellectual education that was given by the revelation to the first Muslims, and also the fact that they lived with the Prophet ﷺ. So they had this instinctively and intuitively action in istikhlaf, because they integrated the Islamic principles, the Islam as such, and this integration was not only an intellectual integration, but it was the fact that this Islamic creed activated in them all their energies, spiritually and psychologically and physically, and it was, we can say, an activation of the creed. The creed was activated in the individual entity and social entity. So this is how the connection was established with this activation. And this is how for them, their creed was their lens through which they looked at the world. So this is the intellectual activation. But there was also activation in their action and everything they did. And like I said, when we look at Islamic civilization, and I refer to Al-Faruqi, he is showing in each part of the Islamic civilization and all the aspects where lies the Islamic creed and how it was activated in their deeds.
I'm Paul, and I'm a psychology student. Sorry?
Mike.
I can hear.
Oh, okay.
I'm Paul, I'm studying psychology, and if we apply the theory of nature of fitra to, for example, psychotherapy, we see the connection or disconnection. Like you have a healthy person, like oversimplifying this. You have a healthy person, you're connected to your fitra, and you may have a person that suffers from some disease or some disorder, mental disorder. And we will see that this person is maybe disconnected from the fitra. And the problem is how to get back to the fitra. It's like we thought about, okay, we could have the elements of fitra from the revelation, so Quran and Sunnah, but there should be some other approaches to fitra. For example, through research and through maybe the principle of universality in behavior. And my question is whether you have some ideas for some other principles that we could apply in psychological research to approach fitra and how to assess the contents of fitra.
Actually, this is a part of the topic of tomorrow about spirituality, where we will refer to Al-Ghazali and and part of what he did in his book here. So I will leave this answer maybe for tomorrow if there isn't any potential answer.
Assalamu alaikum. Mohamed from Paris. If we take your idea of Khilafah as a lens, we could redefine the role or the mission of the Prophet and of every Prophet, which is to realize Tawheed, Imran or Khilafah, and a Tazkiyah, to take the words of Al-Alwani. So what is Islam? Islam is realizing Tawheed, Imran, and Tazkiyah. So it's a real paradigm to describe and think about all Islam.
Actually, I read Taha Jabir Alwani, his works, and I don't agree on everything what he's presenting. First of all, this categorization, I don't agree on it, because I will categorize Tawheed and Tazkiyah like you saw in the presentation. So you see in the presentation that I categorize Tawheed and Tazkiyah under the first responsibility, the first part of the universe that was delegated for human management, and that is the inner world. Because Tawheed and Tazkiyah will be a way, Tawheed will be a way to free yourself from what is not part of your fitrah. And Tazkiyah is this way of purifying, is the purification throughout Tawheed. So this is why I don't exactly agree with. And Imran will fall under this third part, but like I said, he didn't develop these three concepts in a systematic way, giving a general frame that connects everything to each other. So it's very broad.
But even with Al-Faruqi, when he speaks about Tawheed, it's not only an inner. I don't. Sorry. The notion of Tawheed is not only an inner one. Even with Al-Faruqi, Tawheed is about the world order, the cosmological order, the human one and the universal one, and so on. So it's not only a subjective or individual one. Tazkiyah is more about the inner dimension, I think. So Tawheed could be at the top of your model and is only a part, as we did it in the model.
Yes, but we have here the Vicegerency, which is imprinted by Tawheed. The Khilafah is imprinted by Tawheed. It means that in everything, in your management of your inner world, you will manage with Tawheed. In the management of the human relations is the same thing. And in the management of the nature, Tawheed is present everywhere. When you manage the natural resources, you believe that all of this creation, the intellectual, and let's talk about the intellectual dimension of the management of the universe. The intellectual dimension will make you understand that this universe is ruled by one single divinity, and that everything is going back to Him, and etc. So you see that the Tawheed is part of this lens which you look at the world through.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Ahmed Furqan. I'm from the Netherlands. About verse 56 of Surah Zariyat, you said the verses, and I did not create the jinn and mankind except to worship me. You said this verse does not convey actually the specific purpose of the human being, but it's only to convey that the human being is not an exception in worshipping. Then the second verse of Surah Al-Mulk popped up in my mind, and that's He who created death and life to test you as to which of you is best indeed. So my question is it actually what you said that our purpose on our way to the Khilafah is that reachable by engaging in the best deeds? Or is there a different relation between worshipping and engaging in good deeds?
No, like I said, every deed that you do for the purpose to accomplishing this mission is a good deed. And every effort you do for this accomplishment is a jihad. So there is no, this good deeds, every single deed you do for this purpose is a good deed.
Assalamu alaikum. I'm Hazim, I'm working as an engineer. Okay, so you were talking about this in your speech, why humans were created and what's the purpose of life. So, like, if Allah created human mankind and He knows like what is going to happen, like there's a verse saying that everyone's life is written, so it happens according to that. So if He knows the future and He knows the ending and He knows who is going to heaven or hell, He knows everything, but still He creates the whole world with full of drama. So I mean the world with so many events and so many trials, tribulations. So what is the what is it? I mean, there are some scholars say that we are not supposed to go so much deep into why He did so many creations and why so much. And regarding the happiness, there is a verse in the Quran which says it's our choice and it's for our benefit that we worship Him and we have a better life after. So it says he doesn't get happy or He doesn't get sad based on our worship, but it's for our benefit that we worship Him and we get a good akhirah.
So there is one question in your intervention?
Yeah, one question.
The question was about why He...
Yes, why?
Why? Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, why He created humans?
But I think I replied to this question by talking about His attributes and this.
Yeah, but you said about happiness also.
Yes, this is the purpose of the creation of human being, happiness. But the human being got the choice of following, striving for the happiness, or transgressing the divine will. So, and I mean. If often we hear that if God exists, why there is so many bad, so many horror and horrible things in the world? Well, we have our answer also through the lens of Khilafah, because if God would not have allowed human being to do bad, then human being would not be Khalifa. He would be an element of the universe like the other elements, automatically submitting to Him without having the choice. So this is why He gave him the choice to make him able to carry this responsibility.
Assalamu alaikum. Salma from England. My question is related to that one, and maybe there's two questions if that's okay. So given the framework of Khilafah that you outlined, absolutely fantastic, assuming that we're all here, so that's the way forwards. But if I can come back to the whys, because you were kind of saying, well, let's use a logical argument to answer the why, because it's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's character, His attributes that is honouring us. But what if I can turn around and say, I don't feel honoured by that, I'd rather not have existed, because I don't want that test. So, for me, the answer is more when the angels ask the same question, there's corruption and bloodshed, and Allah just said, I know that which you do not know. That's where I get my comfort from, as in I just hand it over, I can't understand it. Rather than this logical thing of, well, we are being honoured by it, and it's our own fault if we go astray. Because, for example, the Prophet, peace be upon him, he obviously was in harmony, he was the example, the walking Quran, but he still suffered grief and loss and all these things. So I don't believe utopia will happen on earth. We have to just strive towards our responsibilities in it. So that's one question, but that's also linked back to the other one about the accountability that we have. Because I keep reading that we are told when Allah asks us, am I not your Lord? we answered, therefore we took that on. The mountains were wise enough to refuse the responsibility. But which person said, yes, I will take that responsibility? Are we saying it was Adam, and because Adam alayhi salam did, we all did? It's a bit like Christianity and the concept of the original sin, which we reject. You know, Adam made that mistake and now we all bear that responsibility. Now, if Adam said yes, I didn't. So those are the two questions that come to my mind from your presentation.
Okay, to Allah.
That had something
For the first question, I think what your reference to the verse that the angels said, Subhanaka la ilma lana, etc. Well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He gave them a rational argument when they were arguing that how can you put a human being on earth or somebody on earth who will corrupt, etc. Allah didn't say, I know and you don't know, so be quiet and don't argue. No. He said, I know what you don't know, and then He gave them the argument and gave them something that is a rational explication. وَعَلَّمَ آدَمَ الْأَسْمَاءَ كُلَّهَا ثُمَّ عَرَضَهُم عَلَى الْمَلَائِكَةِ فَقَالَ أَنْبِئُونِي, etc. So there is a whole clarification coming from Allah, and He didn't say just, I know you don't know, so don't look for it. No, He gave them the clarification, and then they understood. قَالُوا سُبْحَانَكَ لَا عِلْمَ لَنَا. So then they understood and they said Subhanak. So I think, no, Islam is not a religion that tells us just to believe and taslim, just believe how it is and don't look for answers. No, and it's different. And each thing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks us to use our intelligence in everything. أَفَلَا يَعْقِلُونَ إِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ لَآيَاتٍ, etc. So in the things where we are not allowed to use our intelligence are the things where the rules of the intelligence are not of application in Allah self. فَكِّرُوا فِي خَلْقِ اللَّهِ وَلَا تُفَكِّرُوا فِي ذَاتِ اللَّهِ. Ponder on the creation of Allah, but don't ponder on Allah Himself. Why? Because Allah is not submitted to the rules that regulates our intelligence. He's out of these rules, out of space, out of time, out of causality, and we cannot understand a being that is not in space. Can you imagine something that is not in space, or something that is not in time, or not submitted to causality? We can't. So we're not allowed. This is a limit. We're not allowed. But in things that are accessible to our intelligence and that are speaking to us and to our task on earth, etc., this is a thing where Islam invites us to use intelligence. And for the second question, I forgot the question.
It was related to the first one about the responsibility.
Oh yeah. Actually, this is.
I don't feel you really answered that question. In the spiritual professor Ramadan's encouragement for us to criticize back, because you're using the paradigm of logic on the one hand, and then you say when it comes to Allah, that we have to accept there are unknowns.
It's not of application.
And that's the difference between faith and reason, and there has to be an element of jumping into the unknown and faith, surely. Otherwise, every human being would believe. You know, there's logic and rationality, and everybody's logic will also come to a limit at some point. So, for example, your answer to me that by Allah saying to the angels, look, I gave Adam the knowledge of the names, that's the answer to the angels' questions. I actually don't think so. That was just Allah saying, look, you know your place because I have chosen Adam to give him the knowledge. The angels already said, we only know that which you teach us. And Allah told Adam something He didn't teach the angels. So what? He doesn't answer the why. Would He have created something?
He did answer the why, because He showed that Adam had the potential to know everything, and then they understood and they said, لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا. We don't have this potential. We only have the knowledge that you gave us, and Adam have the knowledge that he gave him, and have the potential of going further.
It doesn't answer why would He allow that knowledge to be abused for bloodshed and corruption, which was the angel's question.
No, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knew that Adam had the potential to carry this mission.
Yes, but
this is what He showed to the angels.
The other side of it, no?
Which side?
About He could use a knowledge. We know we can use a knowledge for good and evil. The angel's question was, why would you create a being which would bring bloodshed and corruption? The answer that this same being can bring goodness because I have given him that capacity to be my vicegerent. But the angels pointed out, yes, may well happen, but there is also the misery, which is always a question that people always ask about God. That question actually I don't think is answered in that verse. For me, it's a different answer, it's a more metaphysical answer, coming back to there are things like the ruh. There are things that we are told you will never quite understand from logic, in the same way we cannot claim to understand the true nature of Allah. And for me, that's maybe it's a personal thing, but I still can't see the logic of what you're saying. I can accept it as a believer, that I will hand that bit over, but the logic that you're using here isn't making sense. And that was related to my other question about who accepted that responsibility.
So the logic that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created human being and gave him this responsibility because he is Ar-Rahman and he is Al-Kareem, for you this is not...
No.
Okay, this is...
Because I don't feel honoured by that. I'm terrified by it. Right? And the fact is, people are going to go to hell in the afterlife. And the fact
but Allah
is,
subhanahu wa ta'ala created human being not to be afraid. He created human being for their happiness. مَنْ كَانَ يُرِيدُ ثَوَابَ الدُّنْيَا فَعِنْدَ اللَّهِ ثَوَابُ الدُّنْيا وَالْآخِرَةِ. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave you the good, the happiness of life and of the hereafter. This is what He is offering you.
But as my children could say to me,
as a believer,
I didn't ask to
as a believer, you should be positive and see the opportunities. See this big gift that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given. This is as a believer, if you know that Allah exists and if you believe in the truth, then this is a huge.
That's going back to my first thing. Given I'm here, fine.
I think
this afternoon we'll have a discussion. We carry on this, but you have to answer. There is a second question that you.
Yes, about this verse.
Who accepted?
Yes, this is a metaphysical question. And there's a verse where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَإِذْ أَخَذَ رَبُّكَ مِنْ بَنِي آدَمَ مِنْ ظُهُورِهِمْ ذُرِّيَّتَهُمْ وَأَشْهَدَهُمْ عَلَى أَنفُسِهِمْ أَلَسْتُ بِرَبِّكُمْ قَالُوا بَلَى. Some scholars of the Aqidah says the human being passes by 4 stages. The first stage is عالم الشهادة. The second stage is عالم أو الحياة الدنيا. The third stage is عالم البرزخ. And the last stage is الآخرة. So the first stage is عالم الشهادة. This is what the scholar says. And about this عالم الشهادة, we don't know anything. This is a metaphysical question. It's a metaphysical world that we don't understand. And Allah tells us that we testified, all of us, all of us testified that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is one. So all of us carried this responsibility in a world that we don't know nothing about.
So you did accept it. So can you
there is no brother that is waiting for.
Okay. Can we establish a connection between the notion of istikhlaf and the notion of taklif? And if not, well, I would like to know what are the differences.
Okay, so the last question, and you.
So just we received taklif to be mustakhlif. So it's a quick answer.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Another as great a talk as Brother Khatib. My question is not as metaphysical. I'm bringing it down to earth from a sociological point of view. I saw a great linear way of basically connecting the definitions, and I'm going to quote, and my question is related to your definition of Al-Khilafah was great. You gave 3 where it went wrong: conscious, and then the human interaction, and then human environment. I want to talk about, or I want you to expand on the second point as related to what went wrong, the disconnectedness between society and human being, which is related to your concluding part when you talked about theorizing al-Khilafah. There's no theory, there's no framework. And you concluded by a great point for me that I would like you to expand on it maybe in the afternoon, when you disagreed with framing the Khilafah within Western parameters. To me, don't you see the danger of framing this Khilafah, taking into account that Muslims live in all parts of the world and should abide by laws in different countries? If we define or theorize this Khilafah devoid of these Western parameters, aren't we running the danger in creating this disconnect which you greatly pointed at?
I will try to answer in 1 minute. I think that when we talk about Western models, we are not talking about something that is or that is uniform. There are Western models, but I think those who are trying to contribute to improve things in an ethical manner are all also Westerns and are from different strengths. So contesting the reality in order to improve it is not something that is coming or should come only from Muslims. We have also Western philosophers and Western scholars and Western also movements and streams that are contesting this Western paradigms. So the West is not one single block and we are coming and contesting it. No, we are contributing with our principles, with how we see things, to have a contribution, to have an input that is coming from our principles. And I think that in the West we have so many people that are coming with input from their frames of references in order to change the world. So we are not talking about we against the West.